Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first ever NextBreath Community Conference. We hope you will take the opportunity here today to find support, create connections, and have candid conversations about living with advanced CF lung disease and or navigating the transplant journey. My name is April, I have CF, and I am one of your keynote speakers. Before we get started with the keynote, let's go over a few items related to technology and how we can all interact. So you should notice, I think it should be on the right of your screen, both the event-wide chat and the main stage chat. The event-wide chat is available for all who are in attendance tonight, and the main stage chat is for anyone who is attending our main stage events, including the opening, closing, and the Ask Me Anything panel. If you would like live captions during the event, please click the CC icon located at the bottom center of the video feed. Please note captions are not available if you are using the mobile app to view the event. If you have any technology problems during the session, please visit the Tech and Program Support Room, accessible on the left side of your screen under the Help Desk tab. So, we will be covering sensitive topics. This content can be difficult and triggering. If you believe that you will find the discussion to be difficult or hard to withstand, we encourage you to care for your well-being. This may mean leaving the main stage and joining us later in a small group discussion or Ask Me Anything panel. We have counselors on call tonight, so if at any point you feel overwhelmed by the conversations, please visit the Tech and Program Support Room in the Help Desk tab to request to connect with a counselor. Also, this keynote is being recorded and will be available to all registrants after the event. Now it is time to introduce our panelists. For this keynote, we have Meagan Tenyer, an adult living with advanced CF lung disease, Ray Poole, a spouse of an individual with CF who has had a double lung transplant, and Jen Weber, an adult with CF who is post 2 double lung transplants, and myself, an adult with CF who is 18 years post double lung transplant. So we are here today to share our stories of resilience and navigating uncertainty. We hope you will be reminded of your own resilience, because to have CF means you are resilient. To live with CF is to be resilient. We hope you will be able to see parts of your story in our stories and know you are not alone. So to begin our keynote, I'm going to share my story first. I'm April. A little bit about me. I grew up in the South. I was diagnosed with CF at a year of age. I am 46 now and 18 years post double lung transplant. I'm a professional dance artist, a choreographer, a teacher. I'm also a writer and a disability justice consultant. I'm also the founder of the Intersectional CF Coalition, which you can learn more about in the resources section in the NextBreath conference. I'm a queer cisgender woman, and I use the pronouns she, her, hers. I also like to do native land acknowledgements, which is the land that I am living on that was stolen from Indigenous peoples. So I'm calling in from the stolen lands of the Kickapoo First Peoples, now known as Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am married and have been with my wife for a decade. We have 3 fur babies, 2 dogs and a cat. And I also want to share in case, and I invite the other keynote panelists to do this too, if you feel comfortable. In case there's anyone who's sight impaired in the conference, I just want to describe what is visible in my screen. So I am a white woman with longish red brownish hair. I am wearing glasses and I have on a lavender top, V-neck top, and bronze leaf earrings. And I'm sitting in my home dance studio. When our keynote speakers met as a group to prepare for this event, there were many words or phrases that drifted forward into the virtual room. Words like stamina, adaptation, elasticity, vulnerability, and the marathon it is to have CF. One thing we talked about a lot was how we each have cultivated things in our lives that we deeply care about: relationships, purpose, careers, and how those things have supported our resilience by bringing us joy and love and something to live for. We talked about how often we are expected to be heroes, never complaining and always optimistic about the next fight to live, but sometimes we need to feel the hard stuff, and that actually helps us maintain our resilience. In considering what I wanted to share with you today, I thought about sharing dance. I'm going to share a little tiny dance with you after I share a little bit about my story. So my story begins, as many of ours have. I was diagnosed young because I had recurring pneumonia, funky stool, and was really dang salty. This was the late 70s, so I did all the old school stuff. I slept in a humidified tent. I did chest physiotherapy, took MCT oil. I don't know if many people would even remember that. Jen does. And was engaged in a lot of physical activity, which for me was dance. I was terrible at sports, and I'm still like a huge clumsy person. So it makes no sense that I can dance. I think I just reserve all of my ability for the moment I'm dancing. I walk into walls in my house. I danced throughout my childhood, attended the arts high school in my city, and went on to get my BFA in dance at Florida State University. The CF gene was discovered while I was in high school, and pulmozyme was the new big drug that we were taking then. But at that point, my hemoptysis had gotten so bad that I really couldn't take pulmozyme on any kind of regular basis. So I felt like I missed that opportunity. I feel like I've kind of been in that place a lot, just kind of like ahead of whenever the drugs are, you can get to the drugs and they can help you before you're like too far along or too progressed. So I spent much of college doing tune-ups at home. After a few days, I'd feel well enough to go to dance class. I would cut off the neck of a sock and put that over my PICC line and go into class. I felt like a warrior because I had a little secret that I had this thing on. I entered college at about 85% FEV1, and when I graduated, I was at about 60%. I moved to New York City to pursue my dance career, and within a couple of years, I had dropped to 35%. I remained at about 30 to 35% for 5 years. Those 5 years were brutal. That was my 5 years of end-stage, advanced CF lung disease. I performed up until about 6 months before my transplant. I'm still not sure how I did that. We are incredibly resilient human beings as CFers. My lungs were being torn apart, but I was extremely active in my life. I refused to believe that what was happening to my body was actually happening. When I was 27, my doctor suggested I list myself for transplant. I was terrified. Luckily, she knew me really well and said something to the effect of, just get listed. It takes 2 years to even get to the top of the list. You can always say no if the time comes. And so I agreed to go through the process of getting listed. This is back when we had to accrue time, when it wasn't the LAS score that exists now. So almost 2 years to the day later, almost exactly, after many years of hospitalizations, getting a port, tune-ups, massive hemorrhages, and much more, I found myself in the hospital on O2 for the first time ever. Within a week, I needed the O2 up from 2 liters to 5. Then I started to not be able to walk, even with oxygen. The docs were throwing every big antibiotic at my lungs with no success. I knew that something was really off. I know you all know that sometimes we are lucky enough to build super strong relationships with our nurses. They become our keepers in many ways. My nurse's name was Linda. After about 3 weeks of being in the hospital and my O2 needs having reached 15 liters, so it's basically like an air conditioner blowing up my nose, Linda came into my room one day and I asked her to sit with me. At this point, I was basically panting on 15 liters and unable to walk, eat, or bathe myself. I needed help to get to the bathroom, and my body was starting to shut down. Little parts of my body starting to kind of go berserk each day for no apparent reason. So I asked her, am I dying? And she looked at me and she said, yes. I was really grateful for her honesty. I was really grateful that I had someone that I could ask that question and they would tell me the truth. And then we cried together for quite a long time. The next day, which was a Thursday, my team gathered my family and my friends and delivered the news that I was at the top of the transplant list. But if lungs didn't become available within a few days, I would have to be intubated. And then I would only have about 7 days to still qualify for lungs. My body was in terrible, terrible shape. I think I was down to about 80 pounds. I would have to be intubated, and then I would have those 7 days, and then they basically take me off the list. There have been so many miracles along the way in my story, but the major one is that by Sunday at 2 a.m., after being in the ICU for 3 days on a BiPAP, IV antibiotics, IV nutrition, and unable to lie down because I would drown, the call came. My transplant story is unique in some ways. It's sort of unremarkable post-transplant. I've been really blessed and lucky. I think it's luck. There are so many of us who do all the right things and work really hard. And it's just a crapshoot in many ways what happens next. But I think whatever would have happened next, there was nowhere to go. There was nothing else to do. I was either going to die or get a transplant. And I decided for myself that I wanted to get a transplant. So I haven't had any rejection, acute or chronic. My lung function is at a steady 93% FEV1. CF is still part of my life, but I have remade my life. I've remade my dance career. In the 18 years, I founded and ran an animal rescue because I just wanted to. I went back and got 2 MFAs, one in poetry and one in choreography. I've received recognition for my work. I met my wife. I got married. And there's just so much more, so many more things. I've traveled places that I never traveled before. I've been out of the country, which always felt like a dream. So I work to stay healthy and I rest a lot. I think that's one of those things. My priority first is to stay alive, and everything else is secondary to that. But right next to that is having amazing things to stay alive for. Relationships with my family and my friends and my wife, traveling, bonding with my pets, dancing, writing, thinking, collaborating with artists and thinkers, reading, and just reveling in the wonder of being human and being grateful. So now I'm going to offer a very short little dance improvisation. I'm going to turn the screen, and I welcome you to get up and dance with me if you want. This isn't quite a performance, but I guess it kind of is. 1 second. Is the technology working? I've never done this before at a CF event, so I hope you enjoy. That was a very fast minute. Oh, thank you. So now I'm going to pass it to Meagan Tenyer. Take it away, Meagan.
Well, I don't know how I can follow that up, but I will sure try, but I will do it sitting down. So hi, guys. My name is Meagan Tenyer. I am I'm not 23. I am 32 years old with advanced lung disease from Michigan. Resilience started at a really young age for me. I grew up in a household that really prioritized positive thinking and always looking on the bright side of things. I was fortunate that my mom was a nurse, and she taught me how to have that mental resilience to keep fighting despite setbacks with my health. This includes CF exacerbations, hospitalizations, and surgeries. I have a lot to live for, and I love my family and my life. So doing everything I could to be as healthy as possible was very important to me. My husband, Justin, and I have been together since we were 16, and he understood the importance of me doing my treatments, being as active as we could, and then also pampering me when I was feeling unwell. He used to drive over an hour to visit me in the hospital when I was admitted. He was interested in helping with my PICC lines and port care and wanted to be involved very early on. It's super easy to be compliant when everybody around you supports your goal of staying healthy and staying alive. Into my late teens and early 20s, despite being 100% compliant, my health started to deteriorate rapidly. My lung function wasn't coming back after exacerbations, and my exercise tolerance was decreasing. And I started to get sick more frequently. I knew things were changing. I started oxygen about 10 years ago. At that point, that was the biggest blow to my health. In some ways, I felt like I'd failed. I worked so hard for my health, did everything 100%. I changed my whole lifestyle to make my health work. And it was still declining, and there was nothing I could do about it. Shortly after, I realized I had two choices. I could either stop fighting and consider transplant my only option, or keep fighting and try to push transplant as far down the road as possible. Well, as you could imagine, I chose to keep fighting. I still work out every day. I still do all of my treatments, take all of my medications to keep myself as healthy as possible. Even at 26% lung function, I'm still working 35 hours a week. I finished my master's degree a few years ago, and I love spending time with my husband and family, and I love where I'm at. I think the best advice I can give you is to really focus on what you can control and to not stress as much as you can about the things you can't. I can't control my declining lung function, but I can control how often I do my treatments, how often I take my pills, and how much I work out. Now, I'm not naive. I do understand that I have advanced lung disease and know that things can change at a moment's notice. So I do all I can to be proud of each day I have. I work at a job where I feel fulfilled and appreciated. I spend my time with family and friends who understand my disease, and if some days I'm just not feeling well. In October of 2020, I had the biggest health scare of my life. I was sitting at home, just finished my breathing treatments, when all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. I was breathing so shallow and so fast. My husband came over to me and tried to figure out what was wrong. We didn't know, but I knew I was in a bad place when I couldn't speak because I was so short of breath and my pulse was 65. We made our first call to 911. I lost consciousness before the ambulance arrived, and my husband kept me safe until they came. I woke up in the ICU intubated, tubes coming out of everywhere, and I didn't know at all what happened. I remember the day leading up to it. I remember the day until I went unconscious, but after that, nothing else. I didn't understand how much time had passed, or if this means I would now need a transplant. My first thought waking up was, I'm so glad to be alive, but where's my husband? Where's my family? Once I let my husband in the room, due to COVID protocols, he started to tell me what happened. It turns out I had a huge tension pneumothorax, and I had a 1-inch hole in my lung. I went to cardiac arrest in the ER, where they had to do 3 minutes of CPR to revive me. The doctors informed him it was very likely I had severe brain damage from the lack of oxygen, and that I would not be the same person I was before. The doctors told him, ask her to squeeze your hand, and they were in disbelief when I did. They asked him to do it again, and I did. Justin said the entire room, all of my doctors, the nurses, and the respiratory therapist just started sobbing. Everyone was so elated that I was able to follow those simple directions. The hospital and my CF doctor warned me that I would probably not recover from this and will need a transplant much sooner than expected, but my motivation and my resilience kept me going. I kept walking, kept doing all my treatments, taken all of my medications, and kept coughing even though it hurt incredibly much. After 2 weeks of chest tubes, in the hospital, and surgery to close the 1-inch hole in my lung, I am no worse than I was before that incident. My CF doctor told me himself he is shocked that I recovered so nicely and did not believe that it would be possible. So while you might say I'm stuck between transplant and advanced lung disease, I'm happy to be stuck because there's also room for opportunity, growth, and hope, and hopefully with the help of the CF Foundation, a cure. I'll leave you with my favorite husband's, not my favorite husband's, I'll leave you with my husband's favorite quote: never straight, always forward. Meaning we will have setbacks, we will get off the path, but we are always moving forward and looking forward. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'd like to introduce you to our next keynote. Please welcome awesome CF spouse Ray, whose wife had a double lung transplant in 2015. Thanks, Ray.
That's a powerful story. Thank you, Megan. When I was younger, I used to think about resilience as getting back up after one major setback. It was like watching Rocky come back and beat Clubber Lang after some good long introspection on a beach. But being with Rebecca through exacerbations, new diagnoses, and lung transplant has changed my perspective on it. It isn't one tough challenge to overcome. It's quite a few, one right after the next. And it never seems to be a quick resolution. My wife has pushed through a lifetime of struggle and inspired me all along the way. I remember the first time we dealt with home IVs. We were in college and she was stretched too thin. Between her education and working too many hours, she ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. I remember seeing her arm reach up to wave me down and my surprise at how skinny it had become. When she was sent home on IVs, I remember the weight of it and the stress around ensuring sterility of everything, elimination of any bubbles in the line, and the risks if we didn't get it just right. She took it in stride. She was in science class. It was that resilience that really impressed me, but more importantly, set an example of how we needed to deal with each new challenge as they came. And they were a lot. They came when she would get an exacerbation at the worst time, when she was placed on oxygen while she slept and exercised. And as we saw her PFTs come back lower and lower time after time. But like so many people in this community, she processed the news and then determined what she needed to do. It's one thing to get on a treadmill when you're working toward a PR, and it's an entirely different thing to get on a treadmill in order to slow your decline. However, that was never how she looked at it. She always viewed her current situation as something she could improve upon. Unfortunately, she declined quickly and unexpectedly. The night before she went into respiratory failure, she told me not to visit her in the hospital because she just wanted to sleep. Then New Year's Eve morning came and I got a call from her phone, but it was her doctor on the other end. That morning, they ended up placing her on a ventilator in a chemically induced coma where she would remain for most of the following year. When she woke up in February, she was still on a ventilator and had lost so much muscle she couldn't walk. She couldn't stand, couldn't even reach up to scratch her face. This was when that resilience she built up over her entire life was tested. We did exercises in bed where she would push and pull against me with her arms and legs. As she got stronger, she'd do PT with items around the room. I think apple presses were her favorite. Well, they were my favorite. PT worked with her to stand and take a few steps using a walker, and her goal was to reach 500 feet. She drove a lot of improvement, but she also had tough days and setbacks. At this point, the carrot she was chasing was a double lung transplant. And when she was in the coma, they had told me that she was too sick to qualify for one. But after she woke, there was a glimmer of hope, and she was determined to do everything she could. We applied to multiple programs, but one by one we were turned down because of her condition. And she kept working on her PT because she knew that was her only chance. Months passed by. In May of 2015, she had stacked one small improvement on the next. She could stand with the help of a walker and walk with the help of her team. She had increased her distance to 300 feet with only a few breaks and could pick up apples like they were no big deal. After applying to 6 programs and being outright declined by 5 of them, UPMC was willing to evaluate her. We arrived in Pittsburgh on May 12th. Out of her element and it seemed like out of time, she started her workup in a completely new hospital with new doctors and therapists, all while still dealing with a ventilator and some well-earned anxiety. One constant was her effort. But even though she would push every day, she was starting to decline again. I remember one night her CO2 levels were extremely high. They thought that getting her moving would help. She was trying so hard to keep going, but she collapsed after just a few steps. And it wasn't long after that before they decided to put her on something called ECMO, which is a separate machine that continuously oxygenated her blood outside of her body, bypassing the lungs. It was a huge step back and a scary one at that. In early June, she was listed. Upon hearing the news, I always describe her as she had her game face on. She couldn't get up and walk or do any real PT on her own, but it was her determination that carried her. It was her resilience that got her over the line to that life-saving transplant. She received it on June 18th, 2015, and here we are almost 7 years later, and she's still doing well. For those of you who haven't been through it, I really want to stress her experience isn't common. But the takeaway I had was that her resilience got her through so many points when the odds were stacked against her. In all that year, she spent 171 days on a ventilator and 218 days in the hospital. It wasn't that Rocky movie training montage with his championship belt restored in 2 hours. It was definitely more of a marathon. However, Rocky did get one thing right. He said, "It's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." Rebecca got hit pretty hard with CF, with increasing illness, and with respiratory failure. But she's still moving forward. That's something that's always inspired me about my wife and about so many people with CF as I hear their stories. Her double lung transplant saved her life, but it was her resilience that even made that possible in the first place. And with that, I'll pass the mic over to Jen from Indiana, who's had an incredible 2 double lung transplants. Jen?
Wow, Ray, thank you. Well, I want to say this has just been great to hear all these stories. I'm glad to share mine. In the entry of my home, I have a sign that reads, "Life is a journey, not a destination." And it resonates with me because so many times in my life, I've planned a destination only to find that the route I want to take has detours, roadblocks, or maybe the path is just full of potholes, speed bumps, and nowhere, it's had detours, roadblocks, and it's just not going anywhere I've expected. I may still get where I want to go sometimes, but other times it's not even the same destination. If my body were a car, it would have lots of well-earned dents and dings, maybe some rust, replacement parts, missing parts, and few flat tires. In fact, I've probably driven on my donut tire more miles than is even recommended. I've been stuck on the side of the road and even stalled out, but I've always kept running. The point is, even with a lot of expensive maintenance and tune-ups and lots of maps and planning, trips rarely go as planned, but I've always found my way forward, and I've never been disappointed with the views. Some might be surprised by this. Resilience is defined by the ability of a substance or an object to spring back into shape and retain its elasticity. For me, with all my health challenges over the years, I've sprung back into shape by not fearing change and growth, which are necessary when you've gone over some speed bumps. I stay plugged into a community that supports my growth and change. I also find staying educated and informed about my disease, as well as expanding my interest in opportunities for finding purpose, fortify my resilience. Probably the best example of this most recently was when I left full-time professional work and bounced and faced advanced lung disease when my rejection kicked in after my second lung transplant. I thought my days were relatively numbered since my first rejection episode went so rapidly, and I ended up with a tracheotomy and a lengthy 8-month ICU stay until I was retransplanted. After my current rejection diagnosis, I decided to keep working, but I got my affairs in order. I went on a trip with close friends. I did some meaningful things with my family, and I really thought the great moments in my life were over. But as I stabilized on monthly photophoresis, which is kind of like the ultimate oil change, I realized I needed to get comfortable with uncertainty and continue making choices that supported my well-being in the best possible way, whether I lived 1 day or 1,000 days. Well, that was over 3 years ago. At the time, I was pushing through bad days, really to just prove that I could. I began to feel that I was driving my car through an ice storm, whether it was safe or not, just because I had the skill to do it. Thankfully, a wise doctor pulled me aside and said, "Do I really want to use my energy doing that? Some do, I didn't." So I ultimately left my full-time job to support my health, and I began cultivating other interests and hobbies. I took up cooking, which was a great way to help gain weight. I controlled my diabetes better. I learned to love reading. I nap with my cat, which made an appearance a little earlier whenever I'm tired. I started exercising at the local gym. I go during the senior hours, and I can go at their pace. I also volunteer with the CF Foundation and the transplant communities. It helps me feel like I'm plugged in and engaged. I got to develop some of my artistic talents. I play cello and piano. I've done that for 30 years. But instead of just rushing through rehearsals for my next performance, I can play for fun. Not fearing growth and change made these lifestyle adjustments possible, and they make me happier. The point is, I think the key to getting comfortable with detours in life and uncomfortable bumps, and maybe even stalls on the side of the road, is to always have the ability to keep an openness and flexibility to change. I believe my healthcare teams are my partners in my health. They're kind of like my AAA card. And they collaborate and give me a sense of peace in whatever journey is ahead. Having this little team of mechanics that are all invested in my health and keeping my car on the road kind of helps me want to be a better driver. I've learned this too. I basically choose paths of opportunities that help me stay going forward, even when I don't see the destination or trust that I'll get there. It's okay that I accept that my life and my car may not, look the same as everybody else's, and that, the route that I've taken to happiness and fulfillment might be different. But if I'm enjoying the view, it's okay to just settle in. I don't look so far ahead and think about what ifs all the time. I trust that I'll keep making the right choices and when those crossroads happen. So thanks for listening to my journey, and I hope you keep finding joy in yours. And with that, I'll send it back to April.
Thank you, Jen. That was amazing. You really that car metaphor. It was like you got a lot of mileage out of that.
Very good.
So we're just about out of time, so I want to wrap up. Thank you to all three of you for sharing your experiences and insight about navigating uncertainty while staying resilient. And thanks to everyone who is here for your attention and your engagement. We hope you enjoy the rest of the event. The next round of sessions will begin in 5 minutes from the 40-minute mark. You can head over to the sessions tab to participate in the small group discussion, or stay here in the main stage if you'd like to partake in the Ask Me Anything panel. Thanks again for coming to our first ever Next Breath winter session. And I personally just want to thank the three of you. It has been such a pleasure getting to know you and being in this space with you. I feel like all of us were nodding our heads most of the time as each of us were speaking. And I've loved working with you all.